The LTTE had sophisticated radio instruments, and they had broken into the IPKF frequencies, and they knew the attack was coming. Despite their best efforts, the choppers could not land the entire attacking force. Only 80 para-commandos and 30 Sikh light infantry troops managed to land that night. The troops on the ground were surrounded on all sides by the enemy and had to wait for morning before reinforcements could come in. The Sikh light infantry radio man was killed immediately on landing, and contact with headquarters was lost. In the confusion of the battle, the Sikh ally got separated from the para-commandos. Through the night they fought on, with depleting manpower and ammunition.
The last 4 chaps did a bayonet charge in the classical mold of the charge of the Light Brigade by an infantry.
Only one man among the Sikh ally soldiers survived that terrible battle, the injured sepoy Gora Singh, who was taken prisoner by the LTTE. The 40 men of the para-commandos had spread out and gone after their original target, the LTTE leadership. Unable to locate the LTTE headquarters and heavily outnumbered, they took up defensive positions in 2 single-story buildings. For 18 hours, they kept the numerically stronger LTTE at bay by conserving their ammunition and picking their targets judiciously. On the morning of the 12th, the commanding officer of the 10th Para, Lieutenant Colonel Dalbir Singh, himself led the rescue mission to extricate his men. He took 3 T-72 tanks with him, but all the roads leading up to the university were booby-trapped, and the tanks were finding it difficult to break through. The tank commander, Major Anil Kaul, then did something that took the LTTE by surprise.
My use of railway tracks in this context was totally different, because I felt that since all the roads and tracks had been, sort of mined or trapped, booby-trapped with IEDs, I'm sure they wouldn't have thought of the railway line, because who would drive on a railway line? And the moment we hit the railway line and started moving behind the roadblock, they realized that things were going wrong, and so they evacuated the roadblock.
A little later, the rest of the Sikh ally, along with the 4-5 Gorkha rifles, broke through and took control of the area. In the fighting, the LTTE leadership barely managed to escape. Their leader Prabhakaran was injured in the leg, but fled moments before the Indian troops burst into his headquarters. After the Jaffna University raid, the IPKF paused and did a reassessment. It realized it was under-equipped and overstretched. They needed more T-72 tanks and the amphibious tracked infantry fighting vehicle BMP-1s. In fact, they needed more of everything. So another massive airlift began, with the Indian Air Force bringing in the heavy equipment and Indian Airlines mostly bringing in troops. So heavy was the traffic at Tambaram Air Base in Madras that the runway cracked. By the end of October, the IAF had flown 2,200 transport and 800 helicopter sorties to ferry men and material for the overstretched IPKF.
There were almost 7 brigades in Sri Lanka. And that task that I was given was basically just to ensure the capture of Jaffna. And that took some of the heaviest fighting.
Now reinforced, the IPKF resumed operations in early November. The battle for the control of Jaffna was a hard and cruel fight. For Indian soldiers who were trying to bring peace in a foreign country, it was impossible to distinguish between the LTTE cadre and Tamil civilians. Many times, the LTTE militants would fire at the IPKF from crowded areas, only to hide their guns and melt away among the people when soldiers came looking for them. Everyone over the age of 10, male or female, could have been an armed and deadly adversary.
When the militant dresses like any other one, how do you know? And you can't just because you don't like the look of his face shoot him. You have to question him and to stop him. And the moment you do that, if he decides to shoot it out, you will not even know when he's whipped a pistol and shot you.
For 2 weeks, the battle raged as the IPKF slowly but surely wrested control of the Jaffna Peninsula. And it all had to be done on the ground. The orders were not to use helicopter gunships in flushing out operations. It was only towards the end of the Battle of Jaffna that the Mi-25s were allowed to be used in offensive aerial action. The helicopter gunships speeded up the process, and by mid-November, the IPKF took control of the entire Jaffna area. But many LTTE fighters and their leadership had managed to flee through the lines, south and east of the war zone.
Jaffna had been cleared up. There were other major towns, Kilinochchi, then Vavonia, then Trincomalee itself, then Batikloa, then Mulaitivu. These were the bigger towns, and Talai Manar. So these had to be cleaned up.
All through the rest of 1987 and 1988, the IPKF was involved in counter-insurgency operations and managed to confine the LTTE to a region in and around the jungles of Vavonia. In December 1988, the political scenario in Sri Lanka changed dramatically. Julius Jayawardene lost the presidential elections to R. Premadasa. On assuming office, President Premadasa immediately asked for a review of the India-Sri Lanka agreement. At the same time, he established direct links with the LTTE. He lifted the ban on the LTTE and invited them for discussions to Colombo. India began to pull back troops from Sri Lanka, reducing the strength of the IPKF. In June 1989, President Premadasa asked for a complete withdrawal of the IPKF from Sri Lanka.
Our government was adamant, yes, we will go back, give the Tamil provinces what you promised, their powers to self-govern. You've got a government there now, a Tamil government, give them, devolve the power on the provinces as per the 13th Amendment, which was part of the accord.
But the political scene in India also changed when Rajiv Gandhi lost the elections in December 1989. The VP Singh-led government that came to power decided to withdraw the IPKF from Sri Lanka. On 24th March 1990, the last 2,000 troops of the Indian peacekeeping force boarded INS Magar at Kankenanthurai and set sail for India. Addressing the assembled crowd, IPKF commander Lieutenant General A.S. Kalkat said, "We came as a proud force, and we are leaving as a proud force." The only memorial to the 1,157 soldiers of the Indian peacekeeping force who fell in battle against the LTTE is located in Colombo. But it wasn't just in Sri Lanka that Indian peacekeepers made supreme sacrifices. For over 6 decades now, from the first UN mission to Korea in 1950 till today, more than 160 Indian soldiers on UN peacekeeping missions have died in action.
At approximately 4 p.m. Thursday afternoon, a large group of assailants surrounded our compound in the Jonglei state town of Akobo. They opened fire on an estimated 30 civilians who had sought shelter inside that facility, and 2 Indian peacekeepers died from wounds sustained during the firing.
About 8,000 Indian UN peacekeepers, both men and women, are currently deployed in 9 missions across the globe. Proof that the Indian soldier is one of the most trusted when it comes to maintaining peace anywhere in the world. That brings us to the end of this episode of Guns and Glory. Till we meet again, this is Kabir Bedi saying goodbye and wishing you peace.